Welcome to this week's edition of People Over Politics. Just like usual, we like to bring you many different guests, ranging from cannabis, politics, business owners. So we like to mix it up a bit. We have a new guest today. Thank you for joining us. Again, thanks, Ms. Winston, for joining us. As I said, she does a lot in education, motivational speaking, and is a fellow advocate. So thanks for joining us, Ms.
Oh,
Winston.
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So for people who don't know about you, tell them a little bit about what you do and some of your passions.
Sure. So I like to refer to myself as a proud dyslexia mom. In 2017, my 12-year-old daughter was diagnosed with dyslexia. And within the matter of 3 days, I was told I needed more than $22,000 in order to help my baby learn to read. And so I didn't know what to do. I was lost. I was frustrated. And later, as I navigated the system, I learned that so many African-American parents did not have access to instructional strategies and advocacy. So I started, I'm the founder and executive director of Dyslexia Advocation. We're a 501c3 charitable organization, and our goal is to make remediation affordable and provide access to a network of providers in the special education space. So I've been doing that work since about 2017. I brought the nonprofit to fruition in 2020 in the midst of the pandemic. And then we also received funding as a part of our dyslexia awareness campaign to launch a podcast. I wrote up the grant saying that undiagnosed learning disabilities trigger mental health issues. And so we launched a podcast called the Black and Dyslexic Podcast to remove the stigma, to raise awareness, and to educate Black and Brown families about learning disabilities.
Oh, that sounds awesome. So just to keep it at a very basic level, what exactly is dyslexia for people who might not know?
Sure. Dyslexia is a language-based learning disabilities whereby it impacts the ability to connect sounds to symbols, and letters are symbols, right? And so there's a disconnect in connecting the two. A lot of folks feel like, oh, when someone is dyslexic, they see things in reverse. That's not necessarily true, but it impacts the ability to learn to read, write, and spell, right? So it's going to impact someone's ability to learn to read. It has nothing to do with intelligence. Some of the brightest folks, celebrities even, are dyslexic. Kobe Bryant was dyslexic. Usher Raymond is dyslexic. Will Smith.
Will Smith, wow.
Yes.
I know Noah Lyles, was it 2021 Olympian?
Yes. So it has nothing to do with intelligence, but it impacts the ability to learn how to read, write, and spell. And without the correct instruction, a person with dyslexia may struggle to learn how to read. And then they get behind, right? And then they start acting out in school. And, a study out of Texas showed that 80% of inmates were illiterate and 40% were dyslexic. So it's a learning disability that impacts the ability to learn how to read, write, and spell. And there's a disconnect between sounds and symbols.
Wow. And just to piggyback off what you said, did you say 80% of them were illiterate and 40% of them were dyslexic?
Yeah.
So when we talk about illiterate, I guess what was the barometer of literacy? Were we talking about reading at like a sixth grade reading level? Like what we're?
Yep, we're talking about adults, graduate adults not knowing how to read. Absolutely right. I can't think of the other study, the exact numbers on the other study, but it showed that there was a deficit in adults between the age of 17 to way into adulthood that weren't even reading at a sixth grade level, and how much it was costing the economy, how much it was impacting the workforce. So, for example, here in Maryland, we have a lot of nonprofits, right? And they have all these programs. You're going to get this job training, so forth and so on. And they give them what's called a Tabe Test. And they must be reading at a 10th grade reading level and a 7th grade math. And most of the adults are not reading at that level. So therefore they don't even qualify for these programs. So we're talking about below a high school reading level when we talk about illiteracy. And a lot of folks don't know this, but in 2018, it was Donald Trump passed as part of the First Step Act that all federal inmates must be screened and treated for dyslexia.
Really?
Absolutely. A brother named Amir Baraka, who is dyslexic, who went to prison, who learned how to read in prison. He learned he was dyslexic. He worked with Senator Cassidy, Louisiana, New Orleans, one of those states. Cassidy is a Republican. They worked together to get that implemented in the First Step Act. But then you must ask the question, why are we waiting until Black and brown folk are incarcerated with federal charges before we screen and treat dyslexia? But here in K-12, we still fighting for school districts all across Maryland to acknowledge and say dyslexia and provide the interventions needed.
Really?
Absolutely.
Well, not to segue, but I was reading a book recently, and I would believe that it was an autobiography. I would believe that the child, he probably suffered from dyslexia, or at least his friend did, because it was basically inner city. I think they went to a school in inner city Oakland, California, but they were just talking about how there was a divide between the resources that the Black kids got and the resources that the white students got. And when it came to like reading time, they a lot of times would act up, so they would get sent out of classrooms so they wouldn't have to struggle through reading as they saw it. And they felt as though like the teachers didn't help their fear or their hunger to learn, but only made it worse, and just made them, I guess, go more into a shell.
Yes.
Because they weren't understanding of their struggles, and they weren't truly trying to help them. They were calling them things like stupid and dumb, which is definitely very negative for anyone, and especially a growing student.
You're absolutely right. A good colleague and friend of mine, Kareem Weaver, he's in Oakland, California, and he does amazing work around dyslexia and learning disabilities. And he gave me the figures in regards to how many young Black men were illiterate. He has a daughter, and he said this ain't looking good for her, right? As far as finding a match. But he's doing great work out there, and we talk about that. But it's all across the country in the public education system. Black and brown children who struggle to read are treated differently than our counterparts, right? They're dubbed ADHD, which can be co-current. They're dubbed oppositional defiant disorder, emotionally disturbed. There's always a focus on the behavior and not the academics. I was also director of admissions of a special education school where I got an opportunity to read the evaluations from schools all across the state of Maryland, because parents wanted to get their child into this special education school. And I saw the language used when they would describe, when the practitioners would describe the behavior of a little Black boy versus a little white boy.
Sure.
It was different words used. So this is absolutely what happens. They are deemed behavior problems, and no one is focusing on the academics, right? And that is constantly a common thread. And that's why it's so important that we raise awareness so that parents understand how to advocate for their child and what to ask for. So absolutely.
It's a few things you hit on, and then I have more of a question. But you brought up neurodivergency, and I'm someone who is neurodivergent. But I look at neurodivergency, especially if you're aware, as a superpower. The thought is a lot of times, when I was younger, and struggling paying attention, struggling sitting still. I was never a dumb or a stupid student, but I just, the way that they were teaching, it just didn't work for me. Common Core didn't work for me. A lot of like my learning I did at home. A lot of my learning I just learned in different ways, right? So like I necessarily, the reason I dislike math so much is because a lot of times there's only like one way to get the answer, and you have to show your work, right? But like in like English, it's like critical thinking skills, and it's more abstract. So it's not essentially just one answer. You are right or you're wrong. Show your work. And another big thing that you brought up was, treated differently. So one of the things, starting off from that, I believe, like, if my mom, she would have allowed the school to treat me differently, they would have put me on the special education track, and then who knows when I would have ever gotten off the track, if I would have gotten off the track, right? Because the thought is like, by the time I got to high school, and I had outlets to channel my attention. I was in AP and IB classes. So the thought is like, I found places in which I could excel, and I wasn't necessarily as hyper, right? I had these hyper proclivities on other things that I loved, and
Yeah.
so, I really think that's important, because of course a lot of times we overdiagnose, especially.
Yes, but
Yeah.
what I want to say is special education services is not a place, it is a service. Now, if you would have been eligible and got special education services, it sounds like you may be ADHD like me, and me and my some of my colleagues, we go back and forth about this superpower. My daughter is 12. I ask her all the time, is it a superpower yet? She's like, no, mommy, reading is hard. I work really hard. I only found out I was ADHD when my daughter was identified. And now I go back to school. I was always in smart classes, always in advanced classes, but I worked my behind off. I never did well on tests. That's because my working memory is weak. Did not know that, right? What kept me sane and focused is that I ran track. We know that exercise, for folks who have ADHD, you need to exercise at least 30 minutes a day, right? That kept me on track. But when I think about the struggles I had in college, right, in undergrad, why I didn't get an MBA versus getting I didn't go for an MBA in graduate school because my business classes in undergrad was so hard. Well, my business classes in undergrad was so hard because I couldn't manage my executive function, which is directly related to my ADHD. So we have to educate ourselves, because special education services, it's just like I wore glasses, right? I
Mhm.
couldn't see if I didn't have the glasses on. Like, my daughter is dyslexic. She's going to always be a slow reader. She can read now, but she is going to always read slow. So guess what? When she gets to college, she's going to need accommodations, right? She's going to need more time. So there's a misconception in special education services, right? She's in a private dyslexia school now. If we decide to put her back in public school, I'm actually, I would definitely go through the process to make sure she can get special education services, whether it be a 504 plan or an IEP, right? Because these are things to help, to assist,
True.
right? So it's not seen that way in our community, right? When I taught white children in a predominantly white school district, and they were kiddos with learning disabilities, they all knew why they were there. Some were medicated. Some raised their hand to tell me, "Oh, I wish I took my medication." This was their icebreaker. I took my medication today because I knew this was a very important program and I want to be on my best behavior. Right? There was no stigma around, I need assistance to perform. You understand what I mean? So in the Black and brown community, I would have parents tell me, "Oh, my son can't graduate. He's in this associate's program. You know, he's struggling in math." I'm like, did he have a learning disability? Did he have an IEP in high school? Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. But we don't want to use that. Now I'm 47. And when I was in school, they just lumped everybody together, right? Everybody, learning disability, developmentally delayed, everybody together. That's not appropriate, right? That's just not going to work. But special education is services. It's not a place. So had you gotten an IEP or 504, let's say not even an IEP, but a 504 plan, which is going to allow for accommodations, because you struggle with focusing, you may have gotten time where you could go take a test in a silent room. So you're not, all these distractions. That's only going to help you. You know what
Sure.
I'm saying? That's going to allow you to be able to access information. So we have to change the way we think about special education services. Again, most dyslexics, highly intelligent, not dumb at all. Who else? Muhammad Ali, Magic Johnson, Whoopi Goldberg, Octavia Spencer,
Yeah.
right? All these folks are dyslexic with creative minds. Chris Rock, I laugh because Chris Rock just came out with, he's neurodivergent. He has a nonverbal learning disability. And I said, look at him and Will representing for the neurodivergent people, right? With what happened. But he learned at 48 that he had this. And he's like, wow, it really impacted, my communication style in my marriage, in my professional space. And I'm thinking, wow, that's why his comedy always seemed a little different to me, right? Because he doesn't necessarily pick up on social cues and body language, the nonverbal, right? So we just have to change the way we think about it and be okay with getting the help and assistance that we need. Because as an adult right now, finding out in my, mid 40s that I'm ADHD, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I remember when I used to tell my cousin, oh, you're smart, but I'm not smart like you. And she's like, yes, you are. Yes, you are. And I remember a high school teacher. This is the worst thing, but I was thinking in 10th grade, I had just moved from New York to North Carolina. And the 10th grade teacher said to the class, who do you think are the smartest people in the class? Right. And they named me and maybe 3 other people. That man said, well, I don't really agree that Winifred is. She just works hard. I never forgot that. And I work hard and have to work hard because I'm ADHD, but I never knew. I knew I learned differently, and I knew that I had to work really hard, but I didn't know why. Right. And so a lot of times, a lot of children don't even know that they're struggling. Right. They don't know that something is different. They know that they're struggling, but they don't know that, hey, I have this learning disability and there are resources and help that I should be getting. So as a young person, no young person that I spoke to or an adult will tell you and say it's a superpower. Not until they acknowledge it, they get assistance, they know how to manage it. Now it's like, oh, okay, that's my superpower. But when you're in K-12 struggling and nobody wants to admit they have an IEP, right? It's not popular, right? I don't want the teacher to know. When I was a high school teacher, I taught in Baltimore City. I'm like, okay, how do I give him his test with not as many questions as this person here so they won't see, because he's looking at me like, no, Miss Winston, no, So we've got to change the mindset in our community around those services.
I will agree with you. I will say that. I mean, I often say that about therapy in the Black community, right? So changing the mindset, so I will agree with you, but I will say that there's some people who need accommodations their whole life, right? After it's diagnosed. And then and there's some people in which like special ed is supposed to be an intermediary. It's supposed to help them fill gaps. So like the thought is like for some people, like if they're diagnosed in 2nd grade, it's not necessarily like intended or for the plan for them to be on the IEP or IEP for the rest of their K through 12. Some people might need those accommodations, right? But so there's obviously, from my perspective, once you are labeled, once you accept it, and you, for whatever reason, if you need it, you need just a little help, whatever it might be, you're it's difficult to get off that track. It's that's at least, it might be a misnomer.
It is, because see, special education. So here's the deal. You have an IEP, which provides interventions and then accommodations, right? And then you have a 504 plan that just provides accommodations, right? Now, when you have learning disabilities, you have spectrums. You have folks who are mild, moderate, and severe.
Yes.
Let's take dyslexia. Dyslexia, any child with dyslexia, they need interventions. They need to be taught how to read. When my daughter was in public schools, they kept telling me, oh, well, we're going to let her know that we're going to call on her on the carpet. We're going to sit her in the front. I kept saying, okay, but that's not teaching her how to read. How are you going to teach her how to read? I didn't know the language. I didn't know nearly as much as I knew now. And so a lot of like 2nd grade is kind of late to be identified, to be quite honest, right? Because by 3rd grade, you're reading to learn. Then it switches over to you're supposed to be learning to read at first, and then it switches over to reading to learn, right? So that's kind of late. So a kiddo needs those interventions, those strategies, right? So that they can access and so that they can decode words, so they can learn to read. Then once they get the interventions, they're going to need the accommodations, the more time, a graphic organizer, different things like that, so they can stay on pace with their neurotypical folks, right?
Sure.
They go to high school and they just get accommodations. Then they go to college where the demand is greater, because now you have more reading that you need to do. So if you're dyslexic and you have how many assignments and how many classes to read, you're going to need those accommodations. You're going to need more time. You're going to need it. So now you go out into the workforce, right? you're in politics. Sometimes you got to turn out written material like overnight, right? Within a week. Somebody who has dysgraphia or dyslexia, they might not be able to do that. So they may still need accommodation in the workplace. You understand what I'm saying? So it's not that, it's not like, oh, you're going to get out of it, because that learning disability is not going to go away. But those who don't need as much or as many accommodations, they've been provided the strategies and the interventions that help them be successful. You see what I'm saying? So it's not like, oh, you're going to need it. Like, I'm always all over the place, right? And I was diagnosed with mild dysthymia. I didn't have no mild dysthymia. I was doing things to exacerbate my ADHD, but I didn't know it. How am I working a full-time job, running a business, adjunct consulting, adjunct teaching, all at the same time? Everybody said, oh, you're so involved. You do so much. And how do you do it? I'm like, yeah, because my brain is all over the place, and everything I think I want to do, I'm going to do. Not knowing that I need brain breaks. I need to meditate. You know what I'm saying? I was just a roller coaster.
I know what you're saying. Oh, too well.
You know?
I work full time. I have twins. I'm a wrestling coach.
Yep.
Volunteer. So I get.
So when you don't know, you just go, and then you crash. Then you do those things again. So now I have to be mindful and catch myself. I got to say no. For someone with ADHD, oh yeah, I want to do that. I'm interested in that. Oh, wait a minute. Right? And so now I know, and now I'm learning more about how my ADHD shows up. Right? We've got folks who have severe ADHD that can't keep a job, right? Because they struggle with executive function, time management. They can't get to work on time, right? 15 minutes for me, in my brain, 15 minutes is like 45 minutes, right? Because I'm thinking I can do 45-minute worth of stuff in 15 minutes.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
you feeling me? And you understand, and you like, you like, wait a minute, is she talking about me? Wait a minute. You see what I'm saying? So when you don't know, and you don't have the tools.
I might be late, but I'm going to be there. Yes. And I always came from something else. So, yeah, you're right. I understand.
Yeah. So it's just about education and really understanding and just, embracing, okay, I'm different. Everybody's different. Right. But you know what? This is why I do X, Y, and Z. And these are things that I can do to improve and do better, because, once you keep going and you're late, or you're not getting this done, or you're forgetting this, and you're misplacing this, your anxiety goes over the roof. Right. So then you're like, oh my God. And then that's another problem. Right. So, yeah.
No, like I figured out that like it's a superpower because, I could do so many different things, but it's also a superpower to be able to, highlight everything that needs to be done and focus in on one, take care of that, then move to the next, because it's a gift and a curse, that superpower, right? So the gift is, I could write like 20-page essays in a night, but the curse of that would be that, since I did that and waited till last minute, I might have forgot everything else the rest of that day.
Exactly. And the reason why you waited to the last minute is because your anxiety was through the roof. You thought about the paper. You knew you had to do it. You just couldn't move to get it done because you was like, okay, I want to make sure it's right. I want to make sure it's good. And then you just crippled by it. Then at the last minute, you're like, boom, I'm a hyper focus. Because a lot of folks think people with ADHD can't focus. Yes, we can. We hyper focus. Is that we got a lot going on. But when we enjoy something and it stimulates us, we can hyper focus when we need to, better than anybody's business. Right? So yes. Right. I used to tell myself, oh, the paper wouldn't have been as good if I didn't wait to the last minute.
Yeah. Like I thrive in the 11th hour. That's what I kept saying. Like, I'm Jordan, I thrive in the 11th. Yeah, no, exactly. I feel where you're coming from. And so like, centering the conversation, we've had a great talk. Centering the conversation, what can we do in Prince George's County, and places like Prince George's, places like Baltimore City, with large populations of Black people. I would say definitely funded. Both of them have been funded to an extent, but we don't seem to have the resources we need for mental health, but also special education.
Yeah. So I'm gonna just go back to educating ourselves, right, and reaching out and talking and asking for help. we don't talk about, you mentioned it earlier, we don't talk about mental health issues. We're not talking about if our child have a learning disability, or we think that they're not reading where they need to be, or they can't focus. We don't talk about these things, and we don't necessarily ask for help, right? Um, and really getting involved. I went full throttle. I went in hard. I'm advocating down in Annapolis. I joined some grassroots um, organizations such as Decoding Dyslexia Maryland. And oftentimes I was the only Black person in this space, right? But I was determined to learn and understand how do I get help for my daughter? How do I get help for other folks like this? Because now it's coming full circle for me, because now I'm going back to when I was a high school teacher. Now I'm going back to when I was in higher ed, an adjunct instructor, teaching adults who couldn't read and write. And I'm like, something is missing here. What's going on? So we've got to educate ourselves, and we got to show up. And it's not a one-time thing, right? You're constantly learning, you're constantly educating yourself, and we need advocates, right? So again, like asking for help, speaking up. You know, I talk I'm a very outgoing person. I'm an extrovert, and it's nothing for me to say, "Oh, yeah, really? They're struggling in that?" Yeah, well, I have ADHD and I didn't know it. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, you do?" And then someone will hit me up later. "Oh yeah, I'm struggling with focusing too. I really didn't want to say anything." We got to get out of that and ask for help so that we can access the resources. And that was one of the reasons I really wanted to do the podcast, because we have a badass parent segment. So I have a parent come on and tell their experience with access and special education services, right? And then we have someone with a lived experience, right? Talk about their journey with it. And then we have providers. We have like specialists in the space, whether it be a literacy tutor, an advocate, special education attorney, folks in the space that we typically wouldn't even know or have access to. I took the job as director of admissions because I said, wait a minute, I worked in education. I worked in K-12. I knew people, I knew principals, I knew special educators, and I still couldn't navigate the system. I said, what is going on here? But now, a part of my network, I can call my attorney friend and say, hey, I got this question. I can call my psychologist friend. Hey, do you know a psychologist that a facility that might take insurance? You know what I'm saying? Like, now I have a network, which I did not have before. And I thought, I'm educated, I know people, but why is this beyond me? Right? So we have to go in uncomfortable spaces. I would tell my daughter's father, you have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And oftentimes I was the only Black person there. Oftentimes I didn't know what the hell they was talking about. They said, come to Annapolis. Oh, make appointments with your legislators. I did it. I made the appointments. I went. And before I went in the room, I said, okay, y'all gonna come with me? Because I don't even know what I'm supposed to ask here. Right? I showed up. You know what I'm saying? And so
Yeah,
it was uncomfortable, but I said, you know what? I got to get help for my baby.
absolutely.
And now it's like, I understand how it really has impacted Baltimore City, PG County. And so we've got some advocates out in PG County. We're trying to get some movement out in PG County. But I have my hand in a little bit of everything, right? I'm a part of the Education Advocacy Coalition. I'm on that committee. I'm a certified advocate for the Blueprint of Maryland. I need to be in these spaces with folks that are making decisions and submitting legislation, right? Because that's where it's happening. And we need more of us in those spaces.
Absolutely. And I appreciate all the work you do. I am a chair in the city of the Citizens Advisory Board for Citizens with Disabilities. So, I recommend you come introduce yourself to the committee. But I'm sure there's some work that can be done on the city level. So thank you. And I had a couple quick questions for you.
Yep.
So these are more light questions, but Pepsi or Coke?
Water.
Understood. Hey, keep that skin clear. Okay. Who is your favorite superhero and why?
Wonder Woman.
Okay.
She is my favorite because my name is Winifred. I did not like my name as a child. And Wonder Woman started with a W, and she was powerful. She was exciting. She looked good, and she could protect herself. I grew up in New York in the 80s, so like she was my favorite.
Favorite quote, if you had one?
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Gretzky. I forgot the first name, but you miss 100% of the shot. Warren, is it Warren? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah, no, I did that. That's what I think every time, there's this girl that I should have talked to. You know what I mean? That's what I think about the confidence. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
you talk about shoot your shot.
Yeah. It all works in the same vein, right? It all works in the same vein. But thank you very much, Winifred, and of course, I'm sure I'll be connecting with you. I hope you join us, for one of our citizens advisory meeting. I know I have Autism Ally group joining us next at our next meeting, so we definitely welcome other organizations that do work. So.
Absolutely, it would be my pleasure.
Yes. Okay. Well, tell people how they can stay connected with you.
All right. You can find me across all social media platforms at So All Can Read. All social media platforms: Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. So All Can Read, and our website is www.soallcanread.org.
Thank you so much, and I'm glad. Just wanted to give a special shout out to a good friend, Mac Dawson.
Absolutely.
Mac Dawson, is also someone who's very thoughtful and an advocate. For many things good for the people. But he himself is also dyslexic. So I think he's one of the first people I knew that on a kind of close personal level that was dyslexic. So I know that it is
he connected us.
Yeah, he connected us. He connected us. But a lot of times, like, you don't believe it until it hits home, right? Or you don't understand it until it hits home, until you have someone, who's close to you, who's going through it, experienced it. So I got a better understanding, from him, and I learned about dyscalculia and dysgraphia, as you said. So, I learned that there were other things as well. So.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate it again.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Okay, no problem. Have a good one.
You too.
Yes. Okay, appreciate it. We will have one more guest of this week's episode. Okay, see you soon.
Greetings and salutations, all my friends out there in internet land. I am William Honolulu Jr., and I have the privilege of being the host of the Black USA News Morning Show. The Black USA News Morning Show is currently recruiting guests for an upcoming series on single parents and co-parenting. We find that there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of isolation in the narrative about single parents. And we want to make sure that we keep this platform available to tell the true story, our people's story. The topics that we will be covering range from health, wellness, the type of support, how important your social support system is, romance, and things of that nature. If you're interested in becoming a guest, you can check the link in the description. You can email us at info@grindinggang.com, or you can visit this link. Thank you so much, and have an awesome day.
So, Sita, great to have you. Of course, I believe I met you at a fellow cannabis event at a different part of Maryland than I'm used to. If I'm correct, it was the Canna Fest out in Denton, Maryland.
Yes.
Right? Yes. I believe that's where I believe that's where I first met you. I mean, you can correct me, if I'm wrong. If it was another,
no, that seems to track along the timeline.
Oh, okay, yeah, that sounds about right. Because I go to a lot of different events, so I was like, maybe I met you at a previous event or we were connected. But that is the one that I definitely remember because I think you were the lone person at the MD normal table.
Yes, I was.
I'm not sure if all day, but at least during the times that I was there. So for people who don't know about you, tell them a little bit about yourself.
Yes. Well, I started in the cannabis industry in 2017. I started in the DC pop-up scene when all that was really big and popular. It's not as popular as it used to be, but it's still alive. And then from there, I transitioned into the Maryland cannabis industry in 2018. And there I was a patient consultant, and I also served as a cannabis regimen specialist. I would help people develop their cannabis routines, make changes, taper off, and things of that nature. During COVID, I got the opportunity to join Maryland Normal, where I joined as their event coordinator. I make sure we have a presence at all of the mainstream events where there will be a lot of traffic, making sure that the voters know what's going on with the cannabis law and how to vote and what they should be voting for and things of that nature. Outside of that, I'm also a 2-time award-winning product maker. I won first place in the DC Growers Cup for my skincare products. And I recently worked at a vertically integrated cannabis facility where they grow, they process, and make edibles under the same roof. So, and then
And if you're not shy, which company is that? I didn't know this one. So.
I would prefer not to mention just because it was the greatest experience.
I understood. I'm sure that I have an idea, but continue.
Oh, we'll talk. I'll let you know, just not on here.
I got you. We're not gonna put them on Front Street. I got you.
Yeah. But that's it. Right now, I'm just in the middle of launching my brand, making it the billion-dollar brand that it is. So
awesome. And so your brand has been around since, was it 2018 or 19?
No, it's very new. It's since 2021, so it's just a year old.
Okay.
That's when I started this specific brand, the High Class, which is the skincare line. I've done many things. I've started in culinary. So I used to do infused cuisine. I would do dinner parties before COVID took place. And then when COVID happened, had to switch gears, and self-care was becoming one of the biggest things during the pandemic. So between that knowledge and my sister's business, I developed this product.
So you're a serial entrepreneur. Love to see it. Love to see it.
Yeah.
And so the culinary experience, that really gravitates. For me, I want to make sure that we as a state, when we move forward with legalization, we have more options for infused foods. So and making infused meals mainstream, right? So yes. The thought is like a lot of times you would have this private dinner party, but I went to a hemp happy hour a couple weeks ago, and it was fabulous. You know what I mean? Like the hemp infused drinks, and the thought is like, if we have culinary experts who know how to infuse foods, we can also experience different infusions in the food. So I'm definitely excited to hear more about that. I think my first foray into learning about the infused culinary was somebody called Green Panther LLC.
Yes.
I know they're very big in this Maryland DMV area.
Yes, I know her personally. We kind of started kind of at the same time. So yeah, she's doing the damn thing.
Well, there you go. There you go. I mean, I know a lot of people in this space now. A friend of mine, and also a bud tender who services me sometimes. Sticks. He's higher tolerance, and he does a lot of culinary stuff. And my friend Luan Stribling.
Yes.
From Stribble Treats. She does a lot of culinary stuff. She's also going to be helping out, just like you and Lucy Escudero, with my seniors next week, and educating and introducing them to CBD. So I know a few people in that infusion realm, but I look forward to trying some of your dishes if you ever do hop back in that market. I definitely got to try.
I'm working on it. DC's has a little bit more promising laws, so that will give us more freedom to do that. So I'm looking to see what options I have, definitely.
Sure. I mean, and we have National Suicide Awareness Day coming up. So my good friend Mac, he's planning an event, and I'm helping him with that. I know that you have the body scrubs as one of your product lines for your business, and I was also told that you do something special in a demonstration, something different. So what exactly do you do when you're showing out your rubs, or I'm sorry, your scrubs, as far as, what might be different in the process?
So recently, I've shifted how I do my my vendor setups, just because I want to set myself apart a little bit and offer something that is not typically there. So usually during events and pop-ups and things like that, the patrons don't have anywhere to sit. They don't have anywhere to go. They have, bags full of, pre-rolls and, edibles and things like that. And they're trying them and they have nowhere to chill out. They're just kind of like, trudging through. So I decided to have like an impromptu pop-up lounge area. And I have recruited, and I'm still in the process of recruiting another one, a masseuse who will do massages with my body scrub. So the body scrub is pain relieving, stress relieving, moisturizing, exfoliating, and moisturizing, exfoliating, and I'm missing one. Doesn't matter. But the pain relief aspect is why it's really, really good for massages. And it just offers that quick dose of relief. It doesn't take long for you to feel a difference in your pain levels. So
and is this similar to the salve? The scrub, is it similar?
So the scrub is a body scrub. So you would wash, lather, rinse, apply the body scrub, rinse off the sugar, and pat dry. Is how
okay.
it's applied.
Oh, okay. So it's a little bit different from the salve, but it's still has
different but similar. So it's more of a in shower application.
Okay.
Which is more beneficial because your pores are open. So it's going to hit into your bloodstream a lot quicker. It's going to offer that relief a lot quicker. Inflammation is the root of practically all pain. So the essential oils, the CBD, the turmeric all help to alleviate the inflammation in an area.
I mean, you said something profound, that the inflammation is the root of all pain. And a lot of times that is true. A good friend of mine during the campaign, he made me realize that, like, a lot of us, how often we live with pain and how we normalize just, being in pain all the time, whether it be, at a high level or minute. But the thought is a lot of times we're living in pain and we don't need to. So that's something to think about. I know that you were talking about the salve versus the body scrub. For me, I use the salve, and I am a believer of CBD. I talk about the benefits, but I also talk about the synergy of using THCA with CBD, or CBD with CBG. Whatever floats your boat, right?
Yeah.
The entourage effect, full balance, full spectrum. But the thought is like, I've used the salve, I've seen it's fast acting, and the thought is like I felt better instantly than I would with the extra strength Tylenol or things of that nature. So I personally have learned that the salves and the rubs and the body scrubs can be very helpful. You just have to give it a try. I'm kind of sad that I lost the other half of my salve bottle, but I do know that every time, why? I don't know, I just move around too much, right? But I know every time after I applied it, I felt like, I had a new limb, because
right.
it was so much better, so much less stiff. And the thought is like, then I think about what my friend always tells me, it's crazy how much pain you live with, because you really don't realize that you have these aches
until you're out of pain, until you feel relief, and you're like, wow.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, that is profound. And I do encourage everybody, to learn more about, these holistic benefits of the plant. And, I say the plant, so it encompasses the hemp and the cannabis plant, so yes.
A lot of people don't understand that cannabis is actually a vitamin that we are, how they talk about vitamins and minerals that we're deficient in, and how we need to eat more foods that's high in certain vitamins. And well, cannabis and THC and CBD and all of the cannabinoids, they are in a way a sort of vitamin that we are deficient in, because our bodies do naturally have chemicals that mimic THC and CBD that it produces. We just don't produce it. Most of us don't produce it in high enough amounts to
Sure.
notice the difference. So cannabis is literally a supplement that we need to be adding to our daily lifestyles, whether that's topically, orally, or smoking it. So
Yeah, no. I mean, and you brought up two great points. One of the things I wanted to highlight, especially for maybe non-users or people who are coming to the plant for the first time. There's many different ways to consume. As she mentioned, you can combust it, but you can also put it on your body. You can ingest it, do tinctures or other forms. Some people really like edibles. Me personally, I haven't come to love edibles or anything like that, but I've experienced and tried more edibles.
Interestingly enough, although I make edibles and I'm really good at making edibles and dosing, I too am not much of an edible person. In fact, I find that I consume more. If I do consume, when I consume, it's more CBD than it is THC. Like if I'm eating it, I find more relief ingesting CBD than I do with ingesting THC.
Sure. I mean, too much THC can give you paranoia, right? Like, so that's one of the things that, I talk about, as far as THC. I mean, of course, there's many different pros, but, a con would be that paranoia that you can get, especially with the high levels and continued use of those high levels of THC.
Yeah, paranoia and sluggishness, tiredness. I don't know. That's not the word.
Yeah.
Exhaustion.
I mean, because as I tell people, you get really gone for like 30 minutes to an hour, and then you don't have anything after that. So it's not even a balanced effect. It's just like
right.
It's like it's like a cheap waste of your money. That's how I think of it, and I call it like the hype beast. I call it the hype beast flower, the one that has like 33%, but has less than one.
That's exactly right. During my time at the dispensary, I would they've grown to trust me over time, but I would always tell my patients to try the lower testing flower over the higher testing flower because it was better. And they would all side-eye me and look at me and like, but this says it's 30% and this says it's like 17. And I'm like, just trust me. Like I'm trying to tell you something that I know. Yeah. And this was also by actually trying the flower too. I found that, like, I remember we had a flower that was low as 13%. It was blowing anything 30% out of the water as far as like the smoke experience. Out of the water. So I'm definitely with you. I don't like the THC hype. I don't like the percentage hype that the industry has taken a turn. Like that seems to be the culture. Everyone just wants, that high testing flower. But I also think that's a part of the scheme. Because like you said, it doesn't last that long. It sticks with you for 30 minutes and then it goes. And but I think that's what they want, because then you come back for more sooner.
Sure, but I mean, you also have products that are too high in THC content. Like that shouldn't even be that high for like a human body, right? Like
that's exactly what I'm speaking to.
1,000 milligram edibles, like, and for one, I just will say, I hope you were making your edibles with real flower, not distillate or other extracts. Just because for me personally, I want my edibles made with flower. I don't want my edibles made with.
I actually make my edibles from RSO that I make personally. So I make my own RSO from the flower that I have. So
that's fine. You're making your own, or exactly. But
because RSO is a full spectrum concentrate compared to distillate in all the other forms.
Sure, absolutely, and RSO is definitely gonna you're definitely gonna feel nice because I
Yeah.
remember using RSO. When you go to the dentist's office and stuff like that, and they might advise you not to smoke. So yes, I'm very familiar with RSO. And for people who are unfamiliar, what is RSO?
RSO is Rick Simpson oil. It's a type of one of the only, if I'm not mistaken, cannabis concentrates that's edible, where you can take it, where you can like ingest it, like just it's kind of like a tincture a little bit.
I was about to say tinctures. I thought so I thought that tinctures as well. You can ingest for sure.
Well, but tincture, I don't think tincture would be described as a concentrate so much as an extract.
You
So
might be right. I think you're right. Yeah.
So, as far as a concentrate, RSO is the only concentrate that's edible. All the other forms are only inhaled. But it can be used ingested and topically. You actually can't smoke it. You will run into people who will say yes or no. I'm in the no, the category of people that would say no, you cannot inhale RSO, but you'll probably get different opinions depending on who you speak to. But
And we say inhale RSO because like I've known people to do
people like dab it. Like I know I've heard people trying to dab RSO, and yeah. So
I'm talking about that, but I know that like a little crumble on top of or like a worm on top of the flour, as you're rolling it into a joint. I know people have done that, but that'd be a little different than dabbing.
Right.
For certain.
Right.
Okay.
But yeah, that's pretty much what RSO is.
Okay.
It was created by Rick Simpson, hence the name Rick Simpson oil.
Well, before I go to talking about normal course of organization, I love one of the things that I think Maryland does do great in the medical market is we have the profiles of the different plants, and the terp profile is most important because if you haven't heard me mention it before, when I was a recreational therapeutic user, I believe we all should call it, people use, not adult use or legal use. But either way, when I was that person, I was just, there looking for high THC. I was looking for, the cool brands, right? And, then I became a medical patient and I learned that, like, for one, it's more important to figure out what works for you and when it works for you and why it works for you, right? Because some strands that work for me in the nighttime don't work for me during the daytime, and vice versa. But also, I learned about the terpene profile, right? So I learned that like this helps neurodivergency, this helps sleep, this helps anxiety or whatever it might be, right? So then I really learned about myself. And I learned more about the plant because a lot of people don't realize that there's terps in everything. There's not everything. There's terps all over the world.
It is,
and fruits and plants and stuff like that. So
you could say everything because it is in everything. It is.
Sure.
As a chef, what drew me to cannabis was finding out that terps was in your spices and how you can dictate the mood of a dish based on what spices you use. So, which is what attracted me to doing the infused cuisine aspect, because I was already very well versed in my spices. Adding the knowledge of the terps just made my craft and product that much better. Mm-hmm. So I love terpenes. I'm really an advocate for it to be done nationally. Like we need to be testing for terps in all states that have medical or recreational use, especially medical use, because it really, really makes a difference in your patient. I've prescribed many patients. I've helped out many patients with their regimens and routines, and knowing what to steer away from. Like it saves money. A lot of these patients, low income is an issue. That's one of the other issues of the industry that, insurance can't necessarily cover your, cannabis costs. So all this is out of pocket, and having the terps can help save some money because if you know what terps you need to stay away from, what you shouldn't buy. despite what's being promoted or, yeah.
No, because I was gonna say, as you become an educated consumer, responsible consumer, you might learn that, like, hey, this terpene doesn't react well with me, but you never really knew this because you were just using the plant. But of course, as you learn the terpene profiles, when I went to Colorado, that was one of the most disappointing things. They had great flower. It was abundant everywhere. There was more dispensaries recreationally and medically than there were Starbucks in the state. And there was a lot of craft breweries. But the thing is like no profiles anywhere. Sometimes the bud tenders and the patient care specialists, they can speak to the terp profile, but sometimes they couldn't, right? So like it was very difficult to kind of like know which direction you're going in. Just like it looks good, it smells good, and if I'm an interpreter, I might be able to further break it down, like what terps are in this one. But it is very important. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah.
And are we gonna say? No, I was just gonna say, like moving into Maryland. I know you do work with MD Normal, and so like you said you started during COVID with them. I met them several years ago. I was helping out Luke Jones for several years now, bouncing ideas off. What are some things that the organization would like to see this year? And then when I say this year, in the remainder of 22 and 23, since that's when the legislative session does start.
Yes. So our executive director, Lucia Nyankale, she is actually a grower. So that's something that's been really near and dear to us in our state chapter, is having sensible home grow laws. What we have currently, or what has passed currently, is just not really acceptable. I believe it was like a 2-plant minimum, meaning 1 veg and 1 flowering. Whereas Virginia has more, and so does DC. DC is 3 and 3, and Virginia, I believe it's 2 and 2. And it's outrageous that Virginia beat us with a more sensible home grow law than Maryland would. But that's probably one of our biggest things that we would like to see, is more information and more clarification around home grow for both patients, recreational users, and businesses. Because the businesses are the biggest ones that are giving us pushback. They think they're going to lose money. And just not the case.
Hey, I agree. I mean, the thought is like we definitely need more plants for home growth. I think that one of the things that I told people was, imagine if you're using, the flower for edibles, you could run through that flower.
So fast.
Yeah, so we definitely need more plants for home growth. One of the things that I didn't hit on and I wanted to talk about was when we talked about the medical expenses for medical patients. One of the things that I didn't know initially, and a lot of people don't know, is like how you can get money back, right? So a lot of times they don't tell you. For one, keep your receipts, or go get your receipts at the end of the year from the dispensaries that you're frequenting, because at the state level, you can write off all your sales, or all your sales, and at the federal level, you can write off the ancillary products. So your vaporizers, your rolling papers, your bongs. So the thought is like a lot of people don't know that you can write this off, but if you have the right circle or the right accountant, he can point you in the right direction. So the thought is like definitely keep those receipts, or if not, go back at the end of the year. They have a running list. They got to keep it on the one stop, and you can get some of this money back, right? And once it's legal federally, we can make sure that it's on Medicaid and Medicare, and that you're getting all your money back, or you're not paying arm and a leg. Because the thought is like, as we've seen during the pandemic, like cannabis, just like many other medication, has been treated like optionally for some people, right? Like it's either food or my medicine. It's either cost of living, being able to stay in my house, or buying my medicine. Because the thought is, as I try to tell people, is we look at cannabis like it's fun. It is fun, right? But there's like sometimes this saves people's lives. Like the thought is, it's like, for me, it could be a lot more mental. For some people, this is a life-changing drug. Like the thought is like their quality of life has went up or changed after this. Like I talked to a woman who is from New Jersey. Her son has epilepsy. Now they could stay there, medically. But I mentioned, hey, 10 years ago, I remember hearing a story where there was a family who moved from New Jersey to Washington because they actually, had medical cannabis for pediatric patients. So he went from having hundreds of seizures in a week to, very little in a month, and the quality of his life changed, so that is kind of what I, like to advocate for. And, one of the things that I was talking about, I know I went on a segue, but as people know, I love cannabis, and I think cannabis ties into many different other things around social justice and equity. So cannabis is just kind of that talking point that guides me through conversations.
No, likewise. Yeah, I am aware that you can do the tax thing, but it still doesn't, that's something that happens at the end of the year. It doesn't help, in the moment, a lot of these patients, especially the ones who are coming off of opioids, because I did counsel some patients who were opioid addicts, and they need a little bit of a higher dose of THC. So they're doing more of the concentrates, more of the RSOs, and that they're more expensive. It also runs up your allotment quicker. So there's a lot of different aspects that I experienced from counseling patients that, there's definitely a lot of room for improvement for sure.
And I'm glad you brought up the opioid usage, because I've been talking about it, how medical cannabis usage decreases opioid usage, at least 30%. And
not more, if
yeah,
not
but at least. But the thought is, it's like when you're having a conversation about opioids, cannabis needs to also be in the conversation. And a lot of times I interject it in the conversation, and they realize the connection. Right. And also I try to make them realize the connection of like opioids is terrible. Yes. But the war on drugs was terrible. So I try to also remind them that like, this is terrible. We're going through it. But the crack epidemic, heroin, we also went through it. Right. But it was treated differently. They were treated inhumanely, and just kind of reminding people of the dark past we've had. Right. Like, because we don't want to have this stigmatization moving forward around people and substance abuse or whatever it might be, right? Mental health issues. We need to, of course, look at it differently, frame it differently. So yeah.
Yes. All really good things. All things that definitely it definitely changed my perspective. It's different when you're working directly with the people, and you see them on a daily basis, and you kind of, when you're a bud tender, a patient consultant, you kind of, to some degree, become a bit of a therapist. So it was definitely very eye-opening to see all the different aspects of how cannabis is helping and where the industry is hurting the patients.
Absolutely. I agree. I mean, there's many places that the industry, can work on. One of the things you mentioned earlier was about especially more terpene profiles in the medical industry. Sure, I don't agree with that across the board, but I think that also in the recreational market, we need to really focus, because I don't think that there should be a difference in the educational component from the medical market to the recreational market. I think we need educated consumers across the board. And I think that, of course, if recreational consumers were more educated, that, it would only help them. It would only help them even more. So, yes. And I had a couple quick questions for you.
Yeah.
As far as like what do we call it? A lightning round. Yes. So my first question to you is favorite terpene.
My favorite terpene. So I don't have a favorite terpene. I have a favorite terp ratio, if that's fair.
Hmm.
And
Sure. Let's hear it out. Let's hear it out.
my favorite terp ratio is caryophyllene, myrcene, and limonene. Equal parts of that. It doesn't matter if they're all 30% or if they're all 1 or 2%. I call them the trifecta. That is a terp ratio that I commonly would look for my patients, especially patients who did a lot of work during the day. They needed to stay up during the day. They needed something that wasn't as sedative. I like that terp ratio because it hits all the main things. So it hits anxiety, it hits pain, and it's non-drowsy. So those are the three.
That limonene helps with focus for sure.
Yes, and those were the three things that most people would like. I need to curb my anxiety, but I need to stay awake, or I need to treat my pain, but I need to stay awake. So when I wasn't prescribing the other options like topical or ingesting, and I was smoking, and I was prescribing an inhaled form, that would be the terp ratio that I would most often go for.
Gotcha. I know. I wait to hear your answer. It's supposed to be a speed question, but then you
my bad. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I'm just giving you a hard time. What is your favorite method of consumption?
Definitely smoking, inhalation.
Okay. Are we talking papers or backwoods or Dutches? What are we rolling up?
Papers, sometimes with a little bit of funnel. I know bad habits die hard.
Yeah, I get you. You from the DMV, I get you. Throw a little growler in there. All right. Favorite superhero and why?
My favorite superhero? I don't know, but if I had to choose one off the top of my head, probably Superwoman.
Wow. That's cool. Somebody yesterday said Wonder Woman, so I know they're very close. Yeah, I mean, so cool. We got a Wonder Woman and Superwoman in the same episode. So this one, somebody might fight me over this one. What is your favorite MD flower or best MD flower? I'm going with. I'll tell you after.
I have 3 in mind.
No, but you can't be a specific.
I had to choose one.
It has to be a company. It has to be like a company.
I had to choose one of the 3. This is hard. I'm going to say original New York City Diesel, ONYCD.
Okay.
By Nature's Heritage.
And Nature's Heritage, I can get down with them. I've always liked nature, so
I like Nature's Heritage.
I feel like I'm going with Garcia Handpicked. I'm going with District Cannabis, and then I'll have Nature's Heritage as well. So those probably my top 3. And if I had those 3, I could live. No problems. But yes. All right. So tell people how they can stay connected with you. It's been great. We ran a little over, but time flies when you're having fun. So no problem.
You can find me on Facebook with my name, Sita Abdul Malik. I'm not really on anything else right now. Kind of took a social media fast, so I'm only on Facebook right now. But you can also find me via email, sita.abdulmalik@gmail.com. But Facebook is probably the easiest and quickest way to reach me and find me.
Yes, thank you so much, Sita. Look forward to checking out some of the high class CBD
products. Definitely gotta get you a sample. Definitely gotta get you some samples.
For sure. I appreciate you for coming to visit my senior population next week, and I also look forward to trying this elevated eats. I know that you're not active, but I'm sure you still got those skills. So
of course.
I love to see that at some point, and I love to definitely. One of the things I want to do is make sure to provide other people infused cooking experiences. So if I find a cooking space in the future, definitely invite you out for some classes or just a special event or something like that. So
yes, I definitely would love that. We definitely need to do more work, make more magic. I appreciate you for having me on.
yes, absolutely. Keep thriving, and everything you do for the Maryland community and cannabis community, and just people in general. We appreciate you. So keep doing the great work.
Likewise, you too.
Okay. Yes. Thanks. Have a great one.
You too. Have a good one.
That was this week's episode. Had two new special guests, two dynamic women in their respective careers. So we wish them the best. See you next time.